Welcome back to the wonderful world of marketing. So I'm going to keep talking about Copernican shifts. Now what I want to do is use a few examples of Copernican shifts that, I've just a lot of them. I'll just give you a few that are some of my favorites. So one of my favorites is actually the Mustang, the Ford Mustang, the great car. I actually have a 1967 Sport Sprint Mustang that I'm in the middle of fixing up, and it's got a great story behind it. So Ford Motor Company in the late 1950s introduced a car called the Edsel. The Edsel used to be pretty famous as the lemon, and the word lemon was actually coined because the front grille of the Edsel is a very vertical grille. Kind of gave people the impression that the car was squeezing a lemon or eating a lemon, and it was a massive bomb. The Edsel itself is actually a great car. A lot of people still drive them. There's a big Edsel club. It was a very well-built car, but it was a car that was designed by Ford based on what they thought people should have in a car. It was a bomb because tastes were changing at the time. Late 1950s, the baby boom generation was in full swing. There were big families, a lot of young adults, and that sort of traditional sedan, which is what the Edsel was just exactly the wrong car for that time. It wasn't big enough for a large family like a station wagon, and it wasn't small enough for a teenager driving their first car or wanting something kind of sporty. So it fell in the middle of effectively a dead segment. And in the late 1950s, Ford Motor Company lost $400 million, which would be about $4 billion in today's money on the car. It was a huge disaster, almost destroyed the company. How's that? There was a young executive at Ford named Lee Iacocca. Lee Iacocca, of course, went on to become CEO of Chrysler in the 1980s. But Lee Iacocca took a very different approach, and he actually did a Copernican shift. So he watched the failure of the Edsel, and Lee was like, what happened here? Why did this happen? And he really said, we've got to understand the buying public more, and we have to shift our perspective from the car that we want to build, and we have to look at the kind of car people want to buy. Nothing under there, nothing under there. And so he was on a project called the Ford Fairlane. And the Ford Fairlane was a project where they were beginning to look at more economical cars for a sort of new generation of young buyers. And the Fairlane came out in 1961, pretty successful car. It wasn't an out of the park hit, but it was like fine. So then Lee pulled together a team to really understand who is the kind of the new buyer that they wanted to go after, and they sort of identified the baby boomers. And they said, gee, there's this huge contingent of young people who love freedom. The pill had been introduced in 1961, society was really changing in a cool way. The first jet to go across the ocean was in 1961 as well. Betty Friedan had released The Feminine Mystique. Like, things were really hopping in the early 60s. And they thought, how do we kind of connect to this change in trends, to the youth trend that's happening in culture, and what do kids really want? And so they started talking to kids, and people wanted a fun car, but they still wanted to be able to fit their friends into it. They wanted a car that wasn't too expensive, but they wanted it to look really cool. They wanted people to feel like they were special. They wanted a lot of uniqueness in the car, and they wanted something that was a statement of their personality, freedom, and youth. So they went to the drawing board and they built something called the Ford Mustang. If you really understand the Mustang, it's actually quite an inexpensive car. It was built on the Fairlane body. It was available in lots of different colors and lots of different configurations. You could get hardtops and fastbacks and convertibles, all sorts of options. There's sort of thousands of different versions of Mustangs that you could get. They introduced it in the 1964 and a half model year at the New York World's Fair, and it was an instant hit. It was a huge hit. By the end of that first year, they had made 1 million Mustangs and sold them all. And what really happened? What was that Copernican shift? Let's build something that we want to build, to let's build something that people want. And it's understanding that consumer and really getting into the head of the consumer that helped that Ford design team to create something that was very special. And Ford Mustang's still in production today, and they just celebrated their 50th anniversary 2 weekends ago in April. So kind of a cool story, one of my favorite Copernican shifts. I'll talk about another one in the next installment, but for now, that's The Wonderful World of Marketing, and I'm Grad Conn. Thanks.